Hidden in the mountains of South America, surrounded by jungle, is the ruin of an ancient city. It is one of many which were abandoned when the great prehistoric empire of the Incas was destroyed by the Spanish conquerors. Long before the white men of Europe discovered the Western Hemisphere, there were early civilizations believed to have been developed in North and Central America. About 3,000 years ago, one group of these early people may have journeyed southward, possibly by sea, and settled in South America. Centuries later, the groups remaining in the north progressed to form the civilizations of the Mayas and Aztecs, but by this time, contact between the continents appears to have been lost. For the people of the south developed a different kind of culture. Later, they became known as the Incas. Historians are not certain about these origins, but the best available evidence supports this theory. The Inca Empire had its center in the Peruvian Andes. Its most rapid growth began about 1100 AD. By 1530, the Incas had spread along about 2,500 miles of coast. Their empire included most of what are now the countries of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and also smaller portions of Colombia, Argentina, and Chile. Compared to the United States of America, the Inca Empire was about this size. The population of the United States is about 140 million persons. That of the Incas was probably about 20 million. The greatest numbers lived on the high Andean plateaus of Peru and Ecuador. Some of their ancient cities have been found in the mountains, but many more remain hidden in the dense undergrowth. The Incas were expert stoneworkers. Their material was often hard granite. It was probably cut and shaped with other stones, for the Incas did not have hard metals like iron and steel, nor any machinery, nor even know the use of the wheel. And yet accurate stonework was accomplished without mechanical aids. No mortar was used, yet in some religious buildings, the stones were so carefully fitted that even today, after centuries of destructive force by weather and earthquake, a knife blade cannot fit in the crack between them. This is the entrance to a courtyard in a small mountain village. The Incas often placed a stone ring above such doorways and built stone pegs into the walls on each side. These were used in fastening a log barricade over the opening. This drawing shows how the lower end was held by a hole in the ground and the upper portion tied to the ring and pegs. Rafters for the roofs may have been tied to such stone projections. The ancient cities are roofless now, but once buildings were covered with thatch, like this one which has been restored. Terraces were sometimes needed to provide level ground for raising food. Projecting stones often formed steps for climbing the terraces. These stone boxes were fountains, bringing water to each terrace level. The water started at mountain springs and drained from one fountain to the next. The water is still running in many of these Inca fountains, although they have been abandoned for many hundreds of years. This odd stone may have been used in the study of astronomy. This entire room was hollowed out of solid rock. It may have been a tomb. The exact purpose of many such things is uncertain, since the Incas were unable to write, and their history was handed down by inaccurate legends from father to son. The Incas built an extensive system of roads throughout their empire. Some were merely wide trails, climbing steeply to mountain villages, or crossing rivers on swinging suspension bridges. The main roads, however, were carefully built and often paved with stone. Many are still in use by today's descendants of the Incas. A modern highway following an old Inca road passes the ruin of a rest house called a tambo. They were shelters for Inca travelers. Messages could be carried 100 miles a day by relay runners. Each covered the few miles between tambos, then gave his message to a fresh runner waiting there. Since the Incas never developed writing, messages were recorded on the quipus, a bundle of cords about 2 feet long. Groups of branching cords were colored and knotted. The colors and position and numbers of knots and cords gave a message. Use of the quipus was limited to the ruling classes. The Incas wove fine fabrics of the wool of plateau animals, the llama, alpaca, and vicuña. Inca skill in pottery making was also excellent. This necklace is made of coral beads. The Incas accumulated a great deal of gold and silver. It was used principally for ornament. This golden image of a dog was probably worn from a necklace. Most pieces of jewelry were hollow. This golden head ornament was worn by an Inca ruler. Beside it are ornamental golden feathers and bracelets. These priceless treasures were found very recently in an ancient tomb. These drawings show how the central square of Cusco, the Inca capital, probably looked. Under the Inca government, the people owned nothing but their own clothing. The land, its crops and minerals, and what the people manufactured belonged to the ruling Inca. His representatives divided all the goods among the people as they saw fit. There was no money, since nothing was owned by the people and therefore nothing could be purchased. Gold and silver was useful mainly as ornament, most of it concentrated here in Cusco. Many doorways were made of solid gold. Niches in the walls contained golden ornaments, and plates of gold hung on the outer walls of the Temple of the Sun. Inside the temple was a huge golden replica of the sun. A doorway in the east wall allowed the rising sun to strike this golden image. Seated in golden chairs along one wall were the mummified bodies of the previous rulers, wearing the clothes and ornaments they preferred in life. Across from them were the mummies of their queens. All this gold was the accumulation of centuries, but now this magnificence is gone. Stories of Inca wealth reached the ears of the Spaniards. In the early 1500s, they had crossed the Atlantic and conquered the Aztecs and Mayas of Central America. In search of more gold, an expedition under Francisco Pizarro sailed to what is now Peru and climbed the Andes. They numbered less than 200 men, but by capturing the Inca ruler, Atahualpa, they assumed control of the empire with very little struggle. At Cusco, the Spaniards stripped the gold and silver from the temples and destroyed most of the city. Later, the conquerors rebuilt most of Cusco in their own style. Christian churches have replaced temples once dedicated to sun worship. The wall under these arches was part of the Temple of the Sun. Spanish plazas mark where the Incas had gardens or public squares. The Spaniards built a church where the Inca ruler had his residence. It became the University of Cusco in 1862. The Spaniards often built on Inca foundations that withstood Cusco's destruction. Inca walls often have a second story above them, built of clay bricks by modern plateau people. Although over 400 years old, Inca workmanship remains far stronger and more attractive than recent construction. The snake design indicates that this wall was probably part of an Inca temple. This square doorway was built by the Incas. The arches were built by the early Spaniards. Modern Indians have filled in the space between them with crude clay bricks. Most descendants of the Incas still speak the Indian dialects of their forefathers, although the official language of the modern Andean countries, Spanish, is often heard in the cities. The Cathedral of Cusco is on the exact spot where the Incas had their temple to Viracocha, their god of creation. The Spaniards built the cathedral of the stones from the destroyed Inca temple. These crude carvings were made by very early Spanish colonists. Cusco is a strange blending of old and new. In front of the old cathedral, built of even more ancient building blocks, is a telephone pole, and at its foot a modern gasoline pump to supply the autos of present-day Cusco. The empire of the Incas is almost forgotten by the present-day people of the plateau. Brown-skinned natives whose forefathers may have been Inca rulers mingle with white-skinned natives whose forefathers came as conquerors with Francisco Pizarro. Modern Indians walk among the ruined temples of their ancestors without knowing when or why they were built. A great empire dissolved under Spanish occupation, leaving little behind it except ruined cities hidden in the mountains where once lived the Incas, ancients of the Andes.